Hi there everyone, Art Burns here, wishing you well today. As I like to say in these videos, and I'm especially going to repeat it today because it's very appropriate to the content that we're going to talk about today, I hope the day is treating you well. But more importantly, I hope you are treating you well today, because self-compassion and sort of kindness is something that is really, really, really beneficial. I know I talk about this a lot, and to me, I talk about compassion a lot because, I teach and I practice a form of mindfulness that is also called heartfulness, right? That it's really steeped and based in the concept of compassion, because my true belief is that, if we can allow ourselves to lead, if we can allow our hearts to lead us in compassion, then the rest of the things in life, all the different challenges in life and all the different difficulties that we experience, they really do become, they kind of all take care of themselves if we allow ourselves to be present, right, which is mindfulness, to be really present and accepting of what our current situation is, even if we're going to change it, but just to accept it for now, right? But with presence, not with thinking about the outcomes, not with thinking about how we got here, but thinking about right now. And if we can do that with a level of compassion, presence, acceptance, compassion, to me, this is the answer. It really is. And I'm living proof. I mean, having practiced this for a few years now, I can tell you that my life has changed in so many really beautiful, wonderful ways. And it doesn't mean that my life has gotten better, by any kind of specific metrics, right? Like, I still have, challenges in my life, to be sure, in some ways many more challenges than I had, say 5 or 6 years ago. But the way that I'm able to meet those challenges with this presence, the acceptance, and the compassion has been really, really a difference maker for me. And so to me, compassion is like a 360-degree thing, right? It's not, there's self-compassion and then there's compassion for others. To me, it's all kind of one thing, right? But there's a lot of research out there that shows that, number one, there's plenty of research that shows how many of us, are willing to practice compassion for others, right? We're willing to express compassion for others, but not for ourselves, right? And there's also an abundant amount of research. There's a wonderful woman who's working in this field named Dr. Kristen Neff, and she's been working in this field for a number of years, probably more than 10 years now. And she's just, she said that she can't even keep up with the amount of research that's being published, talking about self-compassion and the benefits of self-compassion. So some of those benefits are reduced anxiety, reduced depression, increased social connection, increased curiosity, increased life satisfaction, overall psychological health, right? Reduced levels of maladaptive eating disorders, right? Or a maladaptive perfectionism that we might have. All these things are rooted and through rigorous research to be shown that, are rooted in the practice of self-compassion. But my favorite of all of them, right, of all the benefits that I've learned about through the work of people, working in self-compassion, the one thing that makes the most difference to me, which is also the one benefit that is most associated with mindfulness in general, especially heartfulness, is emotional resilience. Okay, so just like with mindfulness, being self-compassionate does not mean that we're not sometimes going to feel emotionally, unbalanced or emotionally unwell, right? The key is that we're going to return to a place of balance and wellness much faster through these practices. And so as we practice mindfulness, and to me, again, for the way that I practice mindfulness, it includes compassion. So you can't like separate the two. So for me, when I do the practice of mindfulness, I'm also practicing compassion, which again for me includes self-compassion. And by doing this, again, all these benefits, right? More happiness, more life satisfaction, more social connectedness, more feeling of wholeness, more curiosity, the ability to approach your life with some curiosity, curiosity and to take risks, right? Because when we're compassionate, especially towards ourselves, right? We don't come down on ourselves so hard when we fail, right? We boost ourselves up. We kind of express some kindness towards ourselves, right? And this is a big thing, right? Because a lot of times we're afraid to take chances, but in chances, outside our comfort zone, that's where growth lies, and that's where life lies, and that's where the good stuff is, right? And so we're keeping ourselves back from that good stuff, by with the sort of absence of self-compassion in a lot of ways, right? And so the good news is that self-compassion is so easy to practice, right? It really is so easy to practice. The bad news is that it doesn't come naturally, especially for people here in the West, okay? There's a great story I like to tell that just gets me giggling all the time every time I think of it, that the Dalai Lama came to the United States in the early 90s. In the early 90s, he was on a bit of a mission, right, and actually a really bona fide mission. He approached a number of neuroscientists and psychologists here in the United States, one of the first of which was Richie Davidson, who is somebody I talk about a lot here, right? He's just an amazing mind in this field, neuroscience and research and psychology, and also a very adept and established mindfulness practitioner, right? And so the Dalai Lama approached people like Richie. I think Richie was the first one, and then subsequently other people in the scientific community here in the U.S., because he wanted to use the modern technology, the modern techniques of science, of Western science, to prove that the millennia old practices of Buddhism, of mindfulness, right? Just the fact, this is where the concept of neuroplasticity comes from, right? The Buddha wrote about neuroplasticity 2,500 years ago, right? And so the idea is that the Dalai Lama wanted to prove this with science, right? And to his credit, he said at the time that if the science proves otherwise, then we're going to have to revisit some of our Buddhist texts, which I think is really kind of cool, that he was willing to kind of put on the table that 2,500 years of Buddhist philosophy and practice. That's a big bet, right? So at one point, though, he was in the early 90s. At one point, he was in a room full of psychologists, right, giving a kind of question and answer kind of thing, talking around this subject, right? And one of the psychologists got up and asked a question. The psychologist who I'm talking about is named Sharon Salzberg, who herself, amazing mindfulness practitioner, amazing author. She has a couple of really great books called Real Happiness and Real Happiness at Work. Beautiful books, beautiful, wonderful books. Check her out. But Sharon was standing up in this room full of psychologists, 40, 50 psychologists or so, maybe more, standing there and asking the Dalai Lama a question. And in that question, she referred to the concept of self-loathing. Now, according to the account that I heard of this exchange, the Dalai Lama looked at his translator who was sitting next to him, looked back, was talking like, what does that mean? And that kind of thing, and going back and forth for even like a couple of minutes, right? Like a very, very long time. Like he couldn't even get his head around what this woman meant by self-loathing, right? So finally, when the translator was able to explain it to him properly, he turned back towards the rest of the room and looked around and says, does anybody else feel this self-loathing? And of course, it's a room full of psychologists, so every single hand went up. And, reportedly the look on his face was like, oh my gosh, like he was ready to fall off his chair, And so I tell you this story not because it's fun and it's funny, but also because it's really telling about Western society, right? Especially as opposed to Eastern society, right? Like the Dalai Lama has been practicing meditation and mindfulness since he was a baby, right? And so therefore he had no concept of this lack of compassion for yourself, right? This opposite of compassion for yourself. He literally had no concept of it, right? But it's more telling how prevalent it is in our society and in our sort of upbringing. Like we all have that, that coach when we were young, or that teacher when we were young, who was the hard driving coach and teacher. And this is always kind of, maybe some of you had parents like this as well, that people who are hard on you, right? And they wanted to, they told you that by being hard on you, I'm going to make you better, right? And that's kind of the way that we're brought up, right? And so what that does is that makes us associate, sort of that hardness and that strictness with benefit and with kind of positive outcomes, right? But there's research these days, again, Dr. Kristen Neff and many others, again, Dr. Kristen Neff in 2016 or 2017, during a talk that I watched her give, she says that she can't even keep up with the research that's coming out and being published these days, because there's so much research about self-compassion, right? And all of this research is abundantly clear that this is just not true, right? It's just not true that being hard on ourselves and because that's the thing, people feel like if I'm not hard on myself, I won't drive myself. If I'm not strict with myself, I won't succeed, right? But there's so opposite, right? Again, these benefits of self compassion, right? More drive, more optimism, more risk taking, more psychological wellness, right? More happiness, right? And when you're happy, that's when you're going to be in the flow and you're going to get things done, right? And that's there's it's not a mutually independent concept of happiness and success, right? In fact, most of the most successful people in the world are very happy doing what they're doing. They're not beating themselves up, right? And so I came up with this really great way to illustrate how self-compassion works, right? And how it kind of, kind of works inside of us, right? So picture yourself walking down the street and coming towards you is another person, right? Now I'm going to let you choose what that person looks like, right? Maybe it's an old lady, maybe it's an older gentleman, maybe it's a young person, whatever. It's just another human being, right? Somebody who you associate with as a human being, somebody who is, just on face value, a decent human being, right? And this person's walking towards you and you're just passing each other. You don't know each other, just passing on the street or in the mall or whatever. And about 10 feet in front of you, all of a sudden, without warning, nobody saw it coming, this person trips, right? Or slips on some frozen yogurt at the mall or something, right? And the person slips and the bags that they're carrying go flying out of their hands and they land flat on their face, right? And their nose is bleeding and they're obviously in great distress, right? I'm going to give you two options of how you would respond to this particular thing that happened right in front of you. So this person's right at your feet, nobody else around, right? You put down whatever's in your hands and you bend over and you reach out and you say, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? How can I help you?" Right? Or B, do you say, "Didn't you see the crack in the sidewalk? Didn't you see that spilled yogurt there? How could you have been so stupid to do that? What's wrong with you?" Which one would you do? Most people are going to choose A, right? So, what if you were talking about yourself, right? Picture this. Picture a time where you are in a situation where you just made a mistake, right? You fell flat on your face. You did something at work, or you maybe snapped at your children, or you overindulged in something, right? Like you ate a whole box of Oreo cookies in 30 seconds, and you feel like, oh my gosh, that was not the right thing to do, right? Some kind of mistake, whatever that is for you. Same options of how you respond. Do you say, "Oh my gosh, how can I help you through this? What happened? Are you okay?" Right? Or do you say, "I can't believe how dumb you are. How could you possibly have done that such stupid thing that you just did?" Right? Unfortunately, as many people who are going to say A to the first response, right, to the first scenario, right, where somebody's bleeding in front of them, those very same people are going to pick B in the second scenario, right? When we are the ones who make the mistake, when we are the ones who proverbially fall on our face, we tend to kick ourselves while we're down. Even while we're gushing blood, we're telling ourselves, gosh, you are so dumb. How could you possibly have done that? Right? And so that's what self-compassion is all about, right? Self-compassion is choosing A in both situations, right? To always choose A. Right now, that doesn't mean that later on, like if the if the person was carrying a cup of coffee that got all over your pants, later on, after the person's well and okay, say, hey, I'm going to send you a bill for my dry cleaning, okay? Like that's okay, right? And it certainly is okay for you to give yourself some healthy criticism and kind of like motivate yourself through saying, okay, that was clearly the wrong thing to do. So how can I figure out how to do that better next time, right? But the difference is the tone and the words that you're going to use to talk to yourself about what happened. That is where self-compassion comes in, and that's where self-compassion is really, really beneficial, right? Because again, after you failed, right, that's when you need that support. You don't need to be bashing yourself, because then, just like a young child, like if you yell at a young child for having taken a chance at something and then failing, the child's never going to take a chance again, right? And so you're going to wind up changing the way that you're living. And this is going to happen on a very subconscious level. You're going to wind up changing the way you're living based on your fear of failure, right? And of course, this is going to lead to more stress in your body. This is going to lead to more anxiety, to more depression, to more, perhaps some maladaptive eating mechanisms that you're going to have. It's going to lead to more self-judgment. It's going to lead to more, less emotional resilience, right? Like when something goes wrong, you're going to it's going to go wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong, right? It's not going to go wrong and then you come back and then figure out, okay, what did I do wrong? How can I fix it? How can I do better next time, right? So folks, the really good news, like I said before, is that self-compassion is so easy to practice. It is so easy to practice. And if you'd like to learn some techniques on how to practice it, I invite you to give me a call, okay? Or just drop a comment below, send me a direct message, go to my website, book a call with me, artburnscoaching.com. I would love to have a conversation with you. As you can tell, this is a subject I could talk about forever. I just love talking about it. And I'll tell you that many of my clients, when we get to the part of self-compassion during our program, our 8 to 12 week program, that's when people really start to notice the difference of mindfulness practices in their lives. So if you would like to be one of those people, I would love to help you with that. So thanks for listening. I wish you well. I hope you're good to yourself. Be kind to yourself, okay? And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.